Greetings and welcome. My name is Aaron Craig with Beyond This Games, and in this part 1 of building your cutscene, we are going to be just setting it up and getting things ready for us to start implementing the code on it. So if you are starting with the Start Here project like I am here, then you can follow along with exactly what I'm doing. If you're doing your own project, that's great. Everything we do will be transferable to what you're working on. So let's go ahead and jump in. What we need to do first is create an object, and this is going to be called obj cutscene parent. Now we want a parent cutscene object because there are going to be a couple of functions where we are trying to reference the current cutscene, but we're not always going to know what the current cutscene is. But if we have a parent-child scheme, there are functions that we can use to find that out, and it doesn't matter which cutscene is running, we can actually pull the correct cutscene anyway. So we're going to add a create event inside of here. And we're going to be putting in just the variables that every single cutscene is going to use. And the first one is going to be current step. And this is going to be used because inside of our cutscenes, the way we're going to build them is through steps. So you can imagine that step 0 is one thing happening, step 1 is another thing, and so on and so forth. So we can increment and decrement steps as things are happening. And if we have QuickTime events that are jumping around, then we can say current step equals this set of steps that now are active because they pressed the right key or they pressed the wrong key, so on and so forth. The second variable we need is going to be counter. This is going to be used to have a time that we can have and see how long something is going on for. So we can set counter to anything, and then we can make the player wait a certain amount of time. We can have other variables do something based on the counter and where it's at. It's a very useful variable to have that we're going to use actually quite a bit. Then we're also going to be using enums, which is an enumerator, so it's different possible options for something, and we're going to set those possible options. So this is going to be called cutscene states, and we're just going to have two. We're going to have active, followed by a comma, and paused. And that's all you need. Now we have those two things that we can see which one is which, and I've capitalized them because they are actually global variables that can be accessed anywhere, so we want to have a different kind of syntax for those. And we're going to have current state equals, and if we actually type active, you can see here this enum field comes up, and it automatically declares it as that's how you access enums, is you name the specific one and then the type that it is. So we're going to have a current state set up for that. And that's all we need inside of the parent for now. So we're going to go to objects, and we're going to create another one. This one's going to be called obj cutscene treasure chest. Now, I believe in longer names for variables that can be very useful when they are descriptive enough. For cutscenes, in your game, I imagine you'll actually have quite a few of them. So you'd want to be able to find the one specifically you're working with right away. And if you have just a little bit longer of a name, it's not that hard to type out, especially with autofill. So that's what I'd recommend doing. Now, for this cutscene, it needs to be persistent because we are going to be changing rooms, and we want to be sure to set the parent. If you don't set the parent, you'll have issues, just so you know. So inside of the create event, we're going to call the function event inherited. And what that function does is pulls all of this code and replaces this function with that, basically. So it pulls all of the code from its parent, and then you have all of that code inside of the child cutscene. This is very useful because when you have lots of cutscenes, you can have all the same variables so that you can work with them all the same way. And then down here, you can have event-specific variables if you need specific data for this cutscene and not others. That way you're not wasting memory and space and time typing things out. So that's very useful. We're going to add one more event inside of here. This is going to be the step event. And we're going to say if current state is equal to active. And again, I'm going to let autofill do that job for me. So this is going to be the current state that is active. And we're going to have an else if current state is equal to paused. Ooh. finish that off. So now we have the two possible states that we have it running or it is paused. Now we're going to start setting up the switch event in here as well. So if you've never used switch before, let me kind of explain this. You've got switch for the different cases that a variable can be. And it works like this. You type out switch, parentheses, you put the variable you want, which we're actually going to put current step inside of here. And then this is going to be activated by saying case. And remember, current step is an integer and it starts at 0. So the case that we want to start with is actually going to be 0. And then we use a colon. And down here, I'm going to throw in break. So this will stop the compiler from looking for more code for case 0. Now, we could use a bunch of if and else statements just like this, but the thing is that we're probably going to have dozens of steps running in each cutscene. The cases look a lot nicer and are easier to read, so there's nothing different about them. If you want to use if statements, then go right ahead. I did the first time I made this, but the second time around, the switches were much easier to look at and to debug when you saw problems because you could tell exactly where you were and you didn't have to type out as much every single time, which was nice. So right now, case 0, nothing is happening. So we'll get to that in a little bit though. But come on over here to sounds. We're going to create a sound. This is going to be called sound background music. And I'm going to navigate into the audio folder. And the background music is going to be this background music by Axton Crawley. I found it on freesound.org, a great place. So I'm going to put this down to about here and play it. So this is nice little background music that we can know the cutscene is running because it is going to be playing. So I'm going to pause that. I don't need to do anything down here except change the output to stereo. And then inside of cutscene treasure chest, when it is created, we're going to say background music equals audio play sound. Sound background music, priority 1, and we're going to put it on a loop so that it continues on. Now I am assigning it and grabbing its ID because we're going to want to pause it when we pause the cutscene and resume it when the cutscene begins again. So now inside of here, when it's created, we know because the background music will be playing. So to create a cutscene is really up to you how you do it and when you do it. For this one, we're going to be coming into OBJ Baldric, and inside of his step event, down here, we are just going to be looking at this treasure chest, and we're going to say if he's in front of the treasure chest, then activate the cutscene. You know, create it, and then it will be going. So we're going to say if place meeting my x plus, let's put plus 5, my y, and we're going to say obj treasure chest, which we haven't made yet, but we will. So if we're there, then we're going to say if keyboard check pressed vk space and instance doesn't exist already. So we're going to say if instance doesn't exist, which is what the exclamation point at the beginning is for. So instance exists, obj cutscene parent. So the way that I am doing this is that if they're in front of the treasure chest and they press space and there isn't a cutscene running already, like if there's a cutscene running, we obviously don't want anything to happen. But if there isn't, then we are going to instance create layer. And this is really the only difference as far as I know between GameMaker Studio 1 and 2. So if you're following along with 1.4, then you are going to be using instance create and you just don't need to give it a layer. We have a layer we need to do, which if we come into room 0, I've renamed the layer to objects. By default is called instances, which is long and annoying. So I use objects. So we're going to create this cutscene, which it doesn't really matter where we make it. It doesn't have mask index. It doesn't have a sprite, so it doesn't matter. So we're just going to make it at x, y. The layer name is objects inside of parentheses, and what we want to make specifically is obj cutscene treasure chest. So we're going to make that. We're going to set the character's speed and index to 0. That way, if they were moving, they are no longer moving and they don't look silly running in place while the cutscene begins running. So we need to make an object here called obj treasure chest. And this is a little different from the finished project as well, just because I want to have a specific object that we're going to be using. So we're going to create one more sprite, and this is just going to be obj treasure chest. SPR treasure chest. You can't name something twice. So inside of here, all we're going to do is just fill that green. I don't really care what you do with it because it's not even going to be shown in the actual game. Inside of the treasure chest, we're going to choose this for the sprite. And we're going to say this actually isn't visible at all. We don't want to see it. What we want is to place it inside of here and then resize it and place it while holding the control. We can actually do this, and we can also make it a little smaller. So we're going to put that right there because this is just a background map. These aren't specific objects that I have created in the game. So we're going to use an invisible object to say when they get close to this and press start or press space, then we're going to start the cutscene. And we're going to say it is solid, though, to make sure that the instance, the function that we're using to collide with will work. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, because at this point, we should be able to start the cutscene and have the music play. Okay, that's perfect. So over here we have Sarah moving. We can move as well, so there's a couple things that we still need to set up. Let's do that really quick before we move on to part 2. So in obj Sarah, there's nothing here right now. So we're going to create, and we're going to say image speed equals 0. That's the thing we need to do first because we don't want her to be moving around in bed. She's kind of supposed to be sleeping. And then inside of the cutscene parent, what we're going to do is we're going to say player can move equal false. Now, this may be the place you want to put it or not. Inside of the parent means that every single cutscene is going to inhibit the player's movement. If you only want certain cutscenes to do that, then put it in the specific cutscenes you want. By putting it there, now the player is not going to move when the cutscene activates. So let's go ahead and come over here. And I can't move, Sarah's not moving, and the background music is now playing. So we have everything we need to get started. This cutscene is running, it's just kind of boring at the moment. So we'll start in part 2 of actually doing things and handcrafting this cutscene to do exactly what we want it to. I hope you'll join me for that, and as always, have fun making great games, and I will talk to you later. If you'd like to support me in making these game dev tutorials, consider sponsoring me on Patreon. The awesome people currently supporting me are on the screen, and they get cool benefits like one-on-one training sessions, early access to videos, and more. Check it out in the link below or visit patreon.com/beyondusgames.